Chapter 14. Unfortunately for Flora, she was on the toilet when it all started, legs bound by tight jeans and knickers around her ankles. She was reinventing a little Nelly Furtado in her slightly flat but sweet singing voice. Chase the money to make you buy cars, make you cut cards, tear your balls off for her lunch. As she reached for the toilet roll holder, there was an almighty crash downstairs and a startled yowl from Fillmore. She shot to her feet, stepping forward as she did so and tripping over her trousers. She yelped as she landed heavily on her kneecaps, the impact hard enough to make her eyes water. Ow! That hurt! Struggling to pull her jeans and knickers back up, Flora yanked open the bathroom door, miscalculated how close she was, and swung it full force into her forehead. Crap! She staggered, and sparkles fired like rockets behind her eyes. As blood trickled into her eyelashes, she got the overwhelming urge to be sick and turned back to the toilet, seeing two of them in her head, and swore again. Flora wobbled, tried to steady herself, but with no further warning, total blackness shorted her circuits. It was a piece of luck that her skull missed the cast-iron bathtub by an inch, but as she lay blissfully unconscious, smoke began to slither up the stairs and Fillmore howled frantically, his deep voice full of panic. Evan crashed through the front door, coughing as he was met with fumes instantly. With the internal door missing, he could see that the fire had already consumed most of the kitchen and was licking through the patch of hallway towards the baby gate, the only thing protecting the dogs, in the living room. The plastic coating was falling away from the metal with the intensity of the approaching flames, and Fillmore was furiously circling the room. He was barking so hysterically that Evan, in his own panicked state, could barely think straight. Siobhan stood on the porch trying to keep her voice steady and give accurate directions to the emergency services. A dishevelled Lady Jemima prowled out front, monitoring the situation with fury dancing in her eyes. Evan had barely noticed because he'd been too focused on getting down the road as fast as he could, snatching the keys to Siobhan's car out of her hand and barely letting her get her butt in the passenger seat before he took off. Jemima had followed right behind them. Siobhan's scream had distracted her from dragging on her clothes and berating Terry on his lacklustre performance. Looking for the source of the noise, she saw Evan and Siobhan scrambling over the wall in front of her bedroom window and ran to the front to try and intercept them. Thankfully, she'd missed. "Flora!" Evan yelled, trying to blank out the barking so he could hear if there were any response. The dog shot out of the front door, nearly bowling Siobhan over in the process. "Count them, Siobhan, how many are there?" It was getting hard to see inside the front room and he coughed. "Quickly!" "4, 5, I don't know how many there's supposed to be." Siobhan was completely frantic. "Maybe Flora's not in there." "She's not that lucky," Evan gritted out. An alert, authoritative yip sounded from in front of him. Evan counted quickly in his head. 6. There should be 6. The only reason he wasn't charging straight in was because he knew Flora would never forgive him if he let anything happen to even one of them. "Keep them all out there. Put them in a car and don't take your eyes off them. Smith could be watching." "You there, Lady Bitchface, move your arse and help her," he bellowed, the latter at Jemima, who was still pacing up and down in the safety zone. Evan pushed forward through the smoke, feeling in front of him and using the back of the sofa as a guide. The fire devoured the oxygen from the front door, gaining renewed vigour as a wet snout pushed into his hand. It was Trike. "Where is she, boy? Tell me she's not in the kitchen." Trike barked, a clear signalling sound, trying to let him know something. Evan stepped back and launched a solid boot at the baby gate, sending it crashing against the wall. If Flora were in the kitchen now, she would already be dead, and Evan refused to believe that was true. Trike jumped through the gap and launched himself upstairs. Evan followed, hoping to God the dog was right. He checked Flora's bedroom quickly. There was no sign of her, and Trike, without hesitation, shot straight towards the bathroom. Evan had to push him out of the way to get inside the room because something was jamming the door. He gasped out loud when he saw her, dropping to his knees. "Flora! Jesus Christ!" Flora was out cold, deathly white and bleeding from a shallow wound over her right eye. Evan quickly tried to right her clothes, losing valuable seconds when he struggled to tuck curvy hips back inside of skinny jeans. He scooped her up in his arms and couldn't resist taking a moment to just feel. The warmth in her body weight was instantly comforting, the bolt of relief so sharp that he realised just how mad with fear he'd been. Evan swallowed hard, trying to beat back the lump that had formed in his throat. He yanked the door open and Trike jumped up at them, overjoyed to see his mistress. Evan had to brush him away with his legs so they could get through. Boosting her into a better grip, he headed towards the stairs with the poodle glued to his thigh. At the head of the staircase, Evan looked down and could have sobbed in frustration. The fire had devoured the whole carpet in seconds and was now 3 steps up towards them. Trike whined, and Evan glanced both sides of the landing before choosing to go towards the master bedroom. Finally, there was the reassuring, wailing sound of the fire engine. Evan breathed out and dashed towards the window. "Shite in a bucket, what are you fucking doing out there?" The fire truck couldn't get anywhere near. More precious seconds were wasting while Siobhan and Jemima tried to move their cars further down the lane. Flora's was there too, badly parked as usual and adding to the bedlam. Neither Siobhan nor Lady Jemima had thought to make sure the pathway was clear. 2 firemen carrying a plastic bundle leapt the wall onto the fence and headed for the back garden. Evan coughed. Smoke was now seeping into Flora's room. In his arms she stirred and groaned before barking out a cough of her own. "Evan," she croaked. "Shush. Lie still, hen, I've got you." "What's happening? I can't breathe too well." "Shut up, Flora, I need to think." Firemen began milling in the front garden, shouting orders. Shifting Flora's weight, Evan banged as hard as he could on the glass, trying to get their attention. Voices could be heard echoing somewhere to the back of him, and Trike answered it. He spun on his heel, prayed, and followed the dog. The fumes were choking him. Evan tried to drop lower, but it was impossible with Flora in his arms. The flames had reached the top step, and as he passed the stairwell, he had to yank in Flora's head to prevent her hair from catching fire. He burst into the small bedroom and eyed the window desperately. Cries from down below alerted him to the 2 firefighters racing over the garden. They dropped and wrestled with their burden, unwrapping it and laying it out flat, tossing agility equipment out of their way as if it weighed no more than a dandelion. Evan put Flora down on the bed while he wrestled with the catch on the old sash window. He rammed it open hard, banging his elbow and cursing as pain shot through the bone. With a twist of a compressed air nozzle and a soft whoosh, a jump cushion expanded below him on the garden. The firemen grabbed an end each and ran it towards the house right underneath where he stood. "Come on, mate, you've got to jump. There's no time for anything fancy," a commanding voice yelled up at him. Evan glanced at Trike. He didn't want to throw the dog out of the window, but they couldn't all jump together. "Sorry, boy, it's 3 legs first." He hoisted Trike under his front legs and his legless hip and pitched him out the window, praying the dog forgave him later. Down below, the fireman gave a surprised yelp when a 3-legged dog landed right under his nose and barked excitedly. Evan gave it a try, but the window wasn't large enough for him to jump through. With Flora in his arms, he was going to have to throw her out. He felt a renewed surge of heat and saw the flames breaching the doorway. He should have thought to close the door, but it would have been too much of a struggle. Now the fire was so close that the edge of the mattress was igniting. They had just seconds left. He scooped Flora up and paced to the window, gauging how best to do it. Her big brown eyes opened again, struggling to focus. "Ugh, Evan, what's happening? I feel yucky." She put her palm on his chest and noted sleepily, "Wow, your heart's really pounding." "That's because I thought I'd lost you. Forgive me for this." Evan gave her a quick, hard kiss and flung her outside, using all the strength in his arms to make sure Flora went wide enough to clear the walls. He didn't realise he also held his breath and jammed his eyes shut as he did it. Evan yelped as fire nipped near his ankle, the heat alone enough to roast him. Regaining his focus, he scrabbled onto the narrow window ledge, adrenaline scorching through his veins. God, after all this, let me land right and not make a tit of myself, he mumbled. He caught a glimpse of Flora, cradled safely in the arms of a paramedic, an oxygen mask over her face. Then Evan shut his eyes and leapt out of the window, just as the bed behind him burst into flames. Flora sat on her wet bottom, amidst the devastation of her beloved garden. The lodge was a gutted wreck, steaming and smoking as firefighters blotted out any remaining hot spots. She could have told them not to bother. There was nothing left to burn. Everything she'd owned was destroyed. All her treasured photos and rosettes, the newspaper clippings she'd kept of Fillmore and Riley's show career, all the proof that she'd ever done something worthwhile was gone. The paramedic who'd introduced himself as Bill put a hand on her shoulder. Flora, we have to take you to the hospital and get you checked out. Your husband says you were unconscious when he found you. He's not my husband, she said morosely. I can't go to the hospital. I have the dogs to think of and nowhere else to go. Flora burst into tears and Bill squeezed her shoulder gently. Here he is now. It's not every girl can say a man ran through fire for her. He patted her back gently, trying to be helpful. I bet he would look after your animals. He seems to think the world of you. Flora wailed uncontrollably. He's got nowhere to live now either. In her grief, she sounded like a petulant child, but the reaction felt necessary. She'd not just lost her future, she'd lost every memorable thing about the past. She felt the weight of Evan sit on the mushy, ash-covered mess beside her. He stank of smoke, but when one of his brawny arms slipped around her shoulder, it didn't matter. He tucked her close as his warm lips found the last remaining clean spot on her temple. Hush, Flora, don't do this. I can't stand to see you cry. You never give up. You don't know me well enough. I've given up plenty of times. I always admit when I'm truly beaten. She sniffled, pressing a miserable scrap of tissue to her snotty nose. Sir, I have to take her in. It's a precaution in cases of head trauma, and even if it wasn't, she might need some stitches on that forehead laceration. Flora gave him a stubborn look. Look, I know I sound awkward, but I'm not going to the hospital. I'm staying right here with my dogs. Bill grimaced, at a loss as how to convince her, just as the fire investigator approached and cleared his throat. A full report will be carried out, but it seems pretty clear this was arson. We found what's left of a homemade petrol bomb on the kitchen floor. If we can prove whoever did this knew you were in the house, Miss Marston, the police will be looking to charge somebody with attempted murder. Flora threw herself full length onto the grass, heedless of the muck, and slung an arm over her face. She tried to suppress the racking sobs coming from her gut, and only succeeded in giving herself the hiccups. Evan attempted to pull her up, but she resisted, lying uncommunicative. Whoever heard of trying to murder a fucking dog groomer, for goodness sake? Her chest was still periodically spasming when the final blow was dealt. Frida, stop being so ridiculous and stand up. If anybody should be upset here, it's me. That lodge was a Grade 2 listed building. Flora blinked open a disbelieving eye and scowled at Lady Jemima. She dragged herself to her feet and felt Evan unfold his long limbs beside her. You, she pointed angrily. No, 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 hiccup. You don't get to say how upset you are. You're the reason for all of this. Your psycho ex-husband almost killed the dogs and me. And for what? So that he could extort money out of you. Money, that's all. As if that matters. Look at you. You've got more than you'll ever spend. How many millions could you give him and not even feel the sting in your pocket, you rotten awful lady, sodding muck? Jemima bristled in the face of Flora's indignation. Choose your next words very carefully, madam. You forget that as of now you've nowhere to live unless I allow you to stay at the Hall. I'm also willing to offer Evan shelter, despite the fact you didn't ask my permission for him to live here in the first place. With some difficulty she reined in her anger, which only meant her savagely caustic veneer resurfaced. Did you know he and I have met before? It was just yesterday. We were supposed to have lunch, but never quite made it out of the hotel room, did we, darling? Evan laughed in disbelief. What? He chuckled again, but the sound rapidly became more strangled and cut off altogether. Beside him, Flora stiffened and looked at Lady Jemima's triumphant face. Slowly, ever so slowly, because she almost didn't trust the strength left in her neck, she turned her head towards Evan. She was saying a little prayer in her head, but his face was the picture of horrific realization, and she knew she had just lost something else precious, probably the most valuable thing of all. Almost wistfully, Flora realized that it must be true what they say, that a short, sharp shock will stop the hiccups, because she suddenly had no more left in her. Lady Jemima laughed and smoothed the freshly streaked hair behind her ear. Of course, silly me, you thought I was a brunette. No harm in a little role play, is there? I hope you will forgive me for the ruse. The level of chill coming from the people gathered seemed to feed her. I'm sure if Evan were to see me in fewer clothes, he would have recognised me. She turned to Bill and patted his arm as if conspiring with him in her little bit of fun. I never did see myself as forgettable. Visibly discomfited, the paramedic didn't respond. He glanced at Flora, noting from her colour she had gone way beyond what a few stitches and a nice cup of tea would fix. Evan was silent. He couldn't bring himself to meet Flora's eyes, because he could feel her staring at him, waiting for verbal confirmation. A shout from the side of the ruins broke the awful tension. Bill, we have to go. We've had another call. Big pile-up on the motorway needs all available responders. He grabbed his gear from the mire and scowled at Evan. Sir, I don't know what's going on here, but one of you needs to make sure this girl gets to A&E. I'll be checking with the department when I'm done with this call, so make sure she attends. He patted Flora on the shoulder again, giving her an extra squeeze before running back to his rig. Flora? No. She held up a hand and lurched to her feet. You don't get to say a thing. Not any more. Flora, you're hurt. Let me drive you to the hospital. He tried to put a hand on her arm and she shook him off viciously. Piss off, Evan. I'm going to my car and reclaiming the only things I have left. In case you haven't noticed, that amounts to my dogs and my handbag. I guess I should count myself lucky. I was too busy bursting for a wee to fetch it out in the first place. The sarcasm dripped off the edge of her tongue. Siobhan appeared around the corner. Flora, are you okay? I'm so sorry about all of this. Forget it, Siobhan. It's not your fault. Are the dogs in my car? Yes, a bit jammed in, but they seem okay. I think they're all in shock. They're just lying down quietly. Will you take my car up to the hall and help me get them set up inside? I don't think I should drive right now. I'm a menace at the best of times. You can't possibly want to stay at the hall. Flora responded by giving Evan a look that could sever an artery. I'm out of options, Evan. That's what happens to people who live in the real world. You have to make the best of whatever shit you step in. Maybe one day you'll appreciate what that feels like. Her big, doe eyes seeped with unshed tears. You're free to buzz off back to London and find yourself a cushy flat. You must have more than enough material by now to write a real comedic tragedy. She turned her attention to her boss, composing herself with admirable grace. Lady Jemima, I appreciate the offer to stay in your home. If you want to see Evan again, I'm sure the two of you can come to a mutual arrangement, but if I'm going to continue working with the rescues, then I don't want him anywhere near me. I hope that sounds acceptable." Jemima smirked, then realised she'd somehow just committed to having the rescue mutts plus 2 bloody great big schnauzers in her state-of-the-art home. She tried very hard not to scowl at being checkmated. "Okay, Frida, although I'm surprised you'd give him up so easily. Getting all of that for free was a remarkable stroke of luck for somebody like you." "Somebody like me?" Flora took a step forward, but Siobhan grabbed her by the arm and whispered in her ear, "Don't give her what she wants. She will feed off your distress. Stiff upper lip, and let's get you out of here." Evan tried one last time. "Flora, please, this changes nothing between us." She walked away from Siobhan and Jemima, inclining her head for Evan to follow. When he got near, she stepped in close and breathed deeply, trying to memorize the base scent of him underneath the muck and smoke, saturating his jacket. Her eyes looked into his, still somehow full of love, and for a moment Evan thought it was going to be okay. In my head, I know I'm supposed to have forgiven what happened in that hotel room. We weren't committed. I know it's not fair to you. I know it shouldn't make a difference that it was Jemima and not a random stranger. I know you didn't know it was her. Logically, I know all these things, but it does make a difference, Evan. I thought I could be flippant about it, take a leaf out of your book, and not allow the shit in life to touch me, but I can't." Flora whispered hurriedly, trying to get it all out and voicing every bitter thought running through her brain. She paused for breath and sighed, shaking her head as if she could shake Evan out of it too. "Right now I feel sick looking at you, thinking about her lips wrapped around you. In my mind she's tainted you, tainted everything I've felt about you, and I'm not sure whether that feeling is permanent." Evan felt a terrible sense of helplessness, and he clung to Flora. She clung back, but the contact wasn't changing anything. "I love you. You're the only woman I've ever said that to." He took her face in his hands and used his thumbs to smear the tears from her cheeks. "I never thought I'd say it now I've got verbal diarrhea and I can't stop saying it. I love you. Please tell me what I have to say to make this right." Flora broke down, shaking against his shoulder, and Evan couldn't bear it. "Flora, don't. Just please don't." She straightened up and stepped away from him. "I get it now, Evan. You know my favourite song, it has this line. Those 3 words are said too much. They're not enough. I always thought the best thing in life would be for somebody to say I love you and mean it. But it's true. Sometimes I love you isn't enough. Love shows in the deeds you do and the deeds you make sure you don't do. You should go back to your life. Go back to being happy-go-lucky. You don't need to be in love with me. In the end, I'll amount to so much baggage. Footloose and fancy-free is what you're supposed to be." Flora smiled sadly, running a hand down the front of his shirt. "Evan, you are the guy who gets random blowjobs and beds a different woman every week. It's not a crime to be that guy. It's just a crime to be that guy and pretend you can be something else for me." Evan dragged his hands through his shaved scalp, dislodging a shower of ashy dandruff. "Fuck, this is bloody brutal." "I love you too, Evan, more than you know, but it's not enough. I need stability, and forever, and not looking over my shoulder worrying about the next beautiful woman to come along. I need quiet, cosy love, not big, messy, painful love." She began to walk away and he grabbed her arm. "I'm not leaving the village. Not without trying to change your mind, and not without getting that bastard for what he's done." Flora was quiet and firm as she removed Evan's grip. "This is my problem. It always has been. Goodbye." She kissed his cheek lingeringly, and it was a pain like he'd never known. She gave him one last look and turned away. Siobhan trailed behind, glancing at him, and visibly torn. Evan straightened his shoulders, the weight of them almost unbearable. He'd give Flora time to retreat before he walked back to the village, but he promised his savaged heart this wasn't over. Lady Jemima slithered up next to him, and her arm looped through his. Evan felt the gorge rising in his throat. "Where will you go?" "Not far, I hope. I think I'd miss you." "Miss me? You never even knew me." He laughed, but with a brittle, dangerous edge. He'd never considered hitting a woman, but right now Jemima's safety wasn't a given. "Just what kind of creature are you, Gemma? I'm guessing that's actually your name. I'm not going far, but make no mistake, even when you had your lips around my cock, I've always been out of your reach, you sad, desperate bitch." He gave her a stingingly appraising look. All of this, the contacts, the tits, the lack of an ounce of womanly goodness. Very few men find that attractive, least of all me. "You arrogant fucking son of a bitch. Get the hell off my property before I call the police." "Oh, I'm going all right, but feel free to call the cops. I could do with Bobby giving me a lift." Evan stalked away, not giving Jemima a further opportunity to rant. He was halfway up the drive before he realised the depth of his predicament. He'd lost his phone, his backpack, the first few chapters of his novel, and all of his funds. It was funny, really. None of it mattered without Flora. And where his old mind would have just called Ella from the village, his new mind worked in a whole other way. It was figuring out the best way to stay exactly where he was. Evan wasn't sure how long he spent walking, but it seemed like hours. He knew a while ago that he'd passed the windmill for the 4th time, and that somehow he'd memorised most of the headstones in the graveyard. He also knew he'd not come up with a workable idea to flush out Gabriel Smith. His body was tired, hungry, and he stank. Worst of all, Evan was lonely. With no clue how he ended up there, he found himself sitting on an icy path, resting his head against an old-fashioned street lamp. He stirred when a steady hand clamped down on his shoulder, and he looked up and met the sympathetic face of Bobby Preston. "I just came back from Brigley Hall. I'm hoping you're going to admit to arson and make my life a lot easier." Evan shrugged his shoulders. "Sorry, man, it wasn't me. I know. Despite Lady Jemima's best attempts to claim your involvement, it's like an episode of Thronecast up there right now. What are you doing here?" "Where is here?" "You're outside the station. Are you in shock or something? Did you get yourself checked out?" Evan woke up at that. "God, did Flora get to A&E?" "Yes, a couple of tiny stitches and a few bruises. She's staying the night, reluctantly because of the concussion. She wasn't in a very talkative mood when I saw her." Evan slumped forward and rubbed his eyes with the heel of his hands. He moaned in frustration. "Tell you what, mate, come and stay a couple of nights at my place and sort yourself out a bit. Maybe by then Flora will have forgiven you for whatever it is you've fucked up." "Really? Do you reckon Fiona would forgive you if she found out you'd let Jemima Gartside Smith suck on your dick?" Bobby burst out laughing, before the reality of what Evan had admitted properly registered. "Jesus, mate, you're joking, right?" Evan shook his head. "The excuse that I didn't know who she was isn't sounding any better the more I say it." "But you're with Flora, aren't you? Oh, and there was that woman in the pub. Are you two swingers? Because that's not going to go down well in the village." "No, we bloody are not. Flora and I were only recently together. Sort of. We decided to be together yesterday when it happened. Well, not when it happened, but after it happened, but before I knew who Lady Jemima was." Well, I'm afraid there are grey areas and charcoal areas, but there is no kind of shade when it comes to Jemima. She's just a big old black hole. I'm not surprised Flora's understanding nature only stretches so far. You should count your lucky stars. If I'd done that to Fiona, she wouldn't just be sulking with me, she'd have castrated me. She has the knowledge and the surgical equipment to do it. My balls are the least of my problems. I reckon the only way I can get Flora back now is to hand-deliver a stitched-up Gabriel Smith, and even that might not do it. I have to pull off a grand gesture and make her realise I'm serious. I'm not the guy who gets random blowjobs anymore. It's not all it's cracked up to be, believe me. Yeah, it sounds just terrible. Were you serious when you said I could stay with you for a few days? Bobby nodded, still dreaming about random blowjobs. Okay, I gladly accept, but can we stop at the pub first? Sounds like a plan, Bobby concurred.